Hey, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the BJJ Foxcast. I'm your host, Alex Martinez, and today I'm really excited to have Margo Posner on the show. She is the host of Jitz Chickz podcast. She's a purple belt in Brazilian Jiu Jitsu under Joe Scarola. Did I say that right?
Scarola.
Scarola, sorry, out of Gracie Jupiter. I knew I was going to butcher something.
Okay.
And Margo, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Yes. So I want to get right into it. And we talked a little bit offline, but let's talk about motorcycles and the accident. What happened?
Oh, the accident. Okay.
Well, we'll start with motorcycles. How did you get into motorcycles?
We'll start with motorcycles. We end with the accident.
Yeah.
Usually how it happens.
Yeah.
I've been riding. I found motorcycles kind of the same way I found jiu-jitsu. I've always thought life is short and everything I do is like, let's go, let's go, let's go. And, you know, driving a minivan is kind of slow. So I was 19 and I got my first motorcycle. Sorry, I'm probably going to get interrupted 10 times.
Totally
fine. And I started off with cruisers and then I ended up with sport bikes. And I was like, oh, this works for me because it's like 150 miles an hour is like cruising speed.
Whoa.
So everything was like, I could get everywhere faster. So I loved it. And, you know, my dad rode motorcycles when I was young. Been riding a little over 22 years. I would say the last 5 or 6 years of it, we've actually been going. We went to Banff, Canada, and rode through the mountains. We went to Glacier National Park. We went to Yellowstone. So we've been doing like a lot more adventure riding than anything. Don't ride motorcycles in Florida because everyone is on pills.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah.
So the accident, I'm always switching bikes. I'm always buying and selling, and I hadn't had a bike in a long time because I started jiu-jitsu and years ago and I haven't really had time.
Yeah.
Bought a bike. Not really my dream bike. My dream bike's a 48 Indian, but those are like $78,000. So I got a replica. And the first day that I got it, and I'm such a rebel, it wasn't insured or tagged. I just kind of was riding it to jiu-jitsu and then to a friend's house so I could change the oil and, you know, check the clutch and everything. And some lady looked behind her, looked right at me, right in my eyes, and just went whoop, right in front of me, slammed on her brakes.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Oh, and luckily I have experience knowing how to ride. And instead of crashing into her, I took the slide knowing I'd rather have my skin messed up than my face.
Yeah. Yeah. Did the person stop or did she just keep going?
No, she stopped. Okay. She stopped and then claimed that it was my fault.
Of course. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, and this was when I had just started working or just started training at Gracie, and all the cops trained there. And I got the most miserable female cop I've ever met in my whole life. And I was like, damn, like I found out later that like I'm training with a bunch of cops and they probably could have like given me a break and, you know,
yeah.
But it's too late.
Yeah. I bought a motorcycle a long time ago. It was the first thing I bought for myself with my own money after, you know, moving out and I was in the military and stuff. And I loved it. But just like you, like I hated riding. I lived in Virginia at the time and I hated riding in Virginia because people just like you said, they look right at you and they just cut you off. And
bad drivers in Virginia.
What's that?
Bad drivers in Virginia. Weirdly, horrible. It's a weird place.
Yeah, horrible. Yeah. And it's kind of like it's almost like Phoenix, Arizona, where nobody's really from there, you know?
Yeah.
Like, you know, the whole Hampton Roads, you know, area, Virginia Beach and Norfolk and stuff like that. There's very few locals, right? So I guess all of the bad drivers converge into one area and they just screw everything up. So
they don't know where they're going. So
no. No, but I loved getting up early and riding the bike from, you know, into North Carolina, the Outer Banks, stuff like that. That was fun. Yeah. I love the Carolina beaches are my absolute favorite. But I want to ask you another question. I know we're going to get to jiu-jitsu soon, I promise, but I got to hear about your band. What's the name of your band? What music do you play?
The band is called The Usual. I've known them since we were like 13, 14 years old or so. And they both went to college. Jimmy went to college for guitar. So I don't know what you would call it. It's like a PhD in guitar. He's a genius.
Oh, wow.
And Frank's been playing bass for years and years and years. And maybe 10, 15 years ago, we just decided to do like cover songs together, like 90s cover songs. And like every 3 years we'll be like, let's play a gig, and then we'll play a gig, and then we like won't talk for 3 years. So I mean, we're just busy, and they're always furthering their education. So, you know, we played a couple of gigs couple months ago, I want to say, and then they got busy again. So it's just been kind of crazy since then. But hopefully soon we'll play like a little open mic or something.
Yeah. And now, do they work as like full-time musicians? Is that why they're busy, or they have other jobs? What do they do?
Frank does, I hate, it's so complicated because it's all IT and I know nothing about IT.
Yeah, same.
But he works with something like he did the hurricane relief over in Tampa, and he was over there doing their whole electrical grid went down, and he was working on that. And then Jimmy does something similar to that. And I swear, like every other month, he's going back to school to like get paid more and, you know, try to learn more skills. They're great, you know, so, but then it takes up a lot of their time.
Yeah. He's screwing up your music career, just to let him know that.
Right. That's the one thing. Oh, my cousin, I did an internship in Tennessee for Sony Records, and I was in the A&R department where you like kind of choose bands and stuff like that to be on the label. And I decided then I do not want to do the music business.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
What is it about it that you don't like?
The one thing I can say, I'm not talented in jiu-jitsu at all. I'm not athletic. I'm not good at sports. I'm really not even great at riding motorcycle. The one thing I can say that I am proud of is I am a good singer. I do have a natural talent for that. And in high school, I kind of became a little bit popular towards the end because people found out that I could sing. And I just didn't like being popular. I don't like going out on the street and people recognizing me, and I like singing and then leaving. I don't like talking to people afterwards. You know what it is? I can't take a compliment. I can't take people coming up to me like after a karaoke song or something, be like, "You're so good." I'm like, "Thanks."
Yeah.
So I didn't want to deal with that. I like my privacy.
You know, I'm the type that like I really try to give people their space. And you know, even if I recognize them as a famous person, I'm like, oh, that's whomever, you know, and I try to keep it like very low key. I'm not the kind of, oh, can I get a picture, that kind of stuff. Amy and I go to music festivals in Mexico a couple times a year, and the bands, you know, are like in the crowd, like they play their gig, and then you see them like they're sitting next to you in the crowd, and it's so difficult. It's so difficult not to fanboy, you know what I mean? Because they're really good, a lot of them. And but yeah, there's one guy, I think it's like Dalton Domino or something like that. He's a guy from Texas, and he can play the shit out of a guitar. He can sing really well. Is that your dog?
Here he comes. I'm telling you, he's gonna mess it up for all of us. Okay, he's not gonna. No, I have all my wires over here. I thought he was gonna.
Oh my gosh, I'm just waiting for a giant nose to come into the picture.
Yeah, it's gonna happen, guarantee.
Yeah,
especially because he's hungry.
But he is the one.
Yeah, Dominic.
Yeah, Dalton Domino. He's the one guy that I walked up to and I said, "Hey, man, I loved it." He played a gig at a different bar that we were at, and you could tell that he does not like people. And he just said,
"Oh no, see, I'm not like that." But yeah.
And he just said, "Hey," he goes, "Oh, what's your name?" And I told him my name, and he's like, "All right, thanks." And that was it. I was like, oh, "Why did I do that?" But yeah,
I'm not saying it like an ego thing. I'm not like, "Oh my god, I just don't want people coming up to me." It's just like I mean, I wouldn't say I'm socially awkward. I'm actually like a really friendly person. Yeah. But when someone's drunk at a concert or drunk at a bar, or you were just on stage for 20 minutes and then they're like, "Oh, I love you." I'm like, I don't like that in general.
Right. Yeah.
So, of course, now I do a podcast, which is like people think you want to be famous. I'm like, no, don't even mention.
Oh my God. My friends mess with me so much, especially people that don't listen to the podcast, and they don't do jujitsu. Like they're just my non-jujitsu friends. They're always like, "Oh my God, can I have your autograph?" I'm like, "Oh, shut up."
What are
those? I know, right? Yeah.
What are those?
I know. No, I have a group of friends. Actually, we just did a cruise together that do not do jujitsu, and I try my best to not wear jujitsu clothing, you know, to not talk about it, but they always bring it up. So, hey, I'm all about it. Right. So, but they're fantastic people. They're just not into that kind of stuff. And it's almost nice to kind of disconnect a little bit, you know?
It is.
Yeah.
So I have friends that aren't into it, and it's nice.
It is weird though.
But then you like talk about it and they're like, just shut up.
Yeah. Well,
So I
actually,
was dating this guy, and I'm like, no, I don't just figure out how to do a barren bowl the right way, Margo.
that's right.
Like, you know, like.
Yeah. So tell me about finding jiu-jitsu. You said, if I remember correctly, Gracie Baja Jupiter was not your original school. Is that correct?
I started my 31st birthday. I had a couple friends who I hadn't seen in a while come over for my birthday party. I had like a big party. Um, and I hadn't seen them in a while. I hadn't hung out with them in a while. And I'm sorry if I'm talking weird. I don't know if you can see this, but I
Oh,
got
ouch.
I got kneed in the chin today, and both sides of my tongue are bitten. I was like, I don't have the downs. I just sound like I do right now. I'm sorry.
I get it. I get it. Yeah. Oh
I
my
can't
goodness.
talk right now. I'm like, no,
That's okay.
I'm not drunk. I
That's okay.
promise. If I was, this would be much worse.
Yeah.
Um, but I hadn't seen them in a long time. They came to my house, and one of my friends invited me to go to CrossFit with him, and he gave me like a 2-week free pass. And so I went to that, and his friend said, well, if you're going to do his thing, because they've been best friends for years, you got to do my thing. You got to come try jujitsu. And I had watched UFC since I was 18 or 19. I was 31 at this point. I had watched MMA, Pride. I was really into Pride back in the day, but I never knew that jujitsu was a thing. I had dated a guy who was a brown belt and never introduced me to jujitsu.
Wow.
I didn't, he was like, I'm going to jujitsu. I was like, okay, whatever that is. I thought it was like the gym. I didn't know. And I'm like, do you realize black belt 2 years ago? And you just brought me one day because I love violence.
Yeah.
So, so the first day and I've always been kind of, I roast people. I grew up with a dad who's in construction. You know, I've always been very, not aggressive, but very like straightforward.
Yeah.
So just like on the motorcycles where everything's like this with me, and I was like, oh, a motorcycle, I can go fast. I got into jujitsu, and I was like, oh, I can like legally sign a waiver and choke people.
Oh yeah.
Where has it been my whole life? But the first day I went, I got crushed by all the men in the class. I had always felt pretty safe. I have a concealed carry. I'm pretty tough. I work out. And I always felt really safe. And then that day I realized, oh, I am helpless.
Mm.
And I live alone in a house by myself. I am helpless. If anyone were to ever do anything to me, I'd be dead. And that would be the end of me.
Mm. Yeah.
So I decided, I was like, now I have to do this every day for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
And I have since.
No, that's great. I remember, man, I remember this like it was yesterday. I remember I was injured, so I couldn't train, and I was at my instructor's place, and this is years ago, and there was these two women, both purple belts, and they were training together, and their round was so beautifully technical. All I could think is like, I pity the poor bastard that lays a hand on either one of these women. You know what I mean? There's something about, getting a blue belt's tough, right? And especially, women getting blue belts, that's a rarity. And women getting purple belts and above that, I mean, it's really, really uncommon. So to watch two of them that I basically grew up with, in jiu-jitsu do it, and just being able to sit back and watch, because I had no choice but to watch, it was beautiful. It was awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No choice but to watch. It's like watching a murder. You don't want to.
Yeah. Well, I couldn't train, so I was like, yeah, it's right.
Yeah.
I'm gonna check it out. So yeah, it's really rare. How do you feel about that? I know most women are like, oh, it's just a thing, but it's kind of a special thing, right?
I'm very, I do accounting during the day at my regular job, and I'm very math minded, statistics minded, probability minded. And I think of it as, like I said, I know this sounds egotistical, and it's to a fault sometimes. I'm a kind of a unique person. I don't fit into really anything specific. So I kind of think of it statistically, like how many women train jujitsu, how many women make it to purple belt in the whole world, and I feel like a rarity being a purple belt, and I'm hoping soon to get my brown belt, and that's even more rare. And then to get a black belt, it's even more rare. And what's cool about it is that someday it's not going to be so rare.
Yeah.
That's what's cool. There's going to come a time when it's like, so who cares? Like
Right.
Every girl's a purple belt or a black belt or a blue belt or whatever. So I like to think that it adds to my individuality, but it also, feel a lot safer.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
I never be able to fight anybody off if I had to, but I for sure at least will be able to escape.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Yeah. And one big
So,
mistake, one mistake by them and they're asleep, which is pretty awesome.
yeah, if I'm strong enough, I am.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not the most athletic person, but I can try.
Yeah. Yeah. But I mean, it's not just, it's hard to explain for people that don't do like any kind of martial arts or any kind of combat sports, but you kind of know what your body's going to do in a stressful situation. I mean, obviously
Yeah.
it's going to escalate by, by 100, right? When you're confronted by somebody, but once you get kind of in the weeds, it's kind of like an open mat where you're rolling against somebody, big and sweaty and you're like, oh my gosh. But then halfway through the round, you're like, oh, I'm kind of doing okay right now. I really think that'll kick in at some point if you're ever in a real confrontation.
Yeah, I haven't had anything necessarily happen to me like that in general. Like my coworker and I beat up all my coworkers just because they're annoying and it's fun and they don't know jujitsu. So we wrestle around, we joke around and stuff. And I'm a terrible learner. I have ADD. You could show me something 10 times and I'll purposely not remember it. And like my brain just goes, no, forget you.
Yeah.
So this guy, one of my coworkers, we were just joking around, wrestling around, and he went to like grab me like awkwardly, like really weird. Like I was like almost uncomfortable with it, even though he was joking around, but something in my brain just went boop. And I just, all of a sudden I had a 2-on-1 grip on his hand and I like was lifting it up and getting ready to like drop his ass. And I was like, oh, I gotta calm down. Like, I didn't even think about it. Like and I like stopped and I like looked at my hands and like looked at him and he's on his way down. And I was like, oh, okay, so it works.
Yeah, it works.
Doing this for 10 years. Maybe it works.
Yeah, that's funny. That's funny. So tell me about, you talked about getting crushed in your first class. Were there any other women in that class, your very first one?
There was one other woman who had only been doing it like 2 or 3 months. So it was 2 months before I knew what jujitsu was. Right. Like I didn't get it. I was like, oh, we're wrestling? I didn't know what we were doing. So she was doing all these moves and all these things on me. And I was fighting back pretty hard because I, had done a few things athletically, like when I was younger. But I kind of just laid there because I didn't really know what I was supposed to do. So she would crush, she wasn't really the one that crushed me. She kind of just did all these techniques. And like, I think she got like an arm bar. This was so many years ago. I can't remember what happened yesterday.
Yeah.
But the men, the black belt, one of the black belts and one of the brown belts, my first 12 minutes I was there, he did instead of knee on belly, they used to teach me knee on sternum. And they would put the knee on my sternum and pull up on the gi and just dig in.
Yeah.
And I just completely stayed calm. And then ever since then, anytime anyone does like knee on belly or like I don't think I've ever, he told me don't tap to pressure. And in my head, I was just like, oh, you're not supposed to. So I just never did.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So I think, this is going to sound terrible, but I think a good way to get people to let you off that knee on belly is just fart. If you let one rip, they will let you.
It's like a dolphin's bubble. It's just watertight. I can't. It doesn't happen. 10 years. I am so proud of myself. 10 years. Never once.
Really?
Never once on that. Never once.
Yeah.
I don't know what's wrong. Maybe something's wrong. I'm like a crustacean. I just absorb everything. There's nothing down there.
Yeah. No. I tell people, for me, jiu-jitsu is just an hour of me trying not to fart. That's really what jiu-jitsu is for me.
A lot of especially when you're like into fitness and you're like drinking protein shakes and stuff.
Oh,
like all
yeah.
my.
Yeah. Yeah. Especially when I'm eating cleaner. Oh, yeah. Not great. Oh my gosh. Yeah. We just talked
me,
about
no problems. Everybody else probably a problem, especially because my knee on belly is pretty, I'm short and I'm stocky. So my knee on belly is pretty tight.
Pretty tight. Yeah. I love it. I love it. What about competing? When do you compete now? And when did you start? When did you say like, yeah, this is something I want to do?
My ex was a very good black belt from Renato Tavares. And we started dating 5 months into my jiu-jitsu. And he convinced me, I had never competed before. He convinced me to sign up. I had been training, I think, at that point, I had been training almost a year when I decided to sign up. So he signed me up for intermediate blue belt.
Oh, gosh. Okay.
And I didn't know because I had never competed. And to me, I go in thinking, oh, I'm just rolling, I'm just training. I didn't realize it's a fight. I had no idea.
Right.
And so I went in. The first girl I was against was like my size, but she was 14 years old. It was like some weird Naga competition, and I did okay against her. And then the second girl was like a 2-stripe blue belt, and she just basically got on top of me, just stayed on top the whole time. So I was like, okay, we're never doing that again.
Yeah.
So then I started taking an interest in the rankings and the this and the that, and how to sign up correctly, and then failed every time. Every white belt match, every blue. I think I won 1 white belt match. I won maybe 3 blue belt matches.
Right.
And
That's
then
not bad.
So far, like 3 purple belt matches that I've won. Okay. Everything else I've lost.
Yeah, that's okay. That's okay. What do you typically do? Do you do any IBJJF stuff, or is it just local stuff in Florida?
I do anything that comes to South Florida, really anything that I can. I mean, not in the last year, but when I decide to compete, I'm like, okay, I'm going to do like 8 months and I'm just going to compete everything that comes to South Florida. It's harder though as a purple belt. There's nobody who's like an old geriatric, 40 years old. Right. And also a purple belt. Also my weight goes like this constantly. So I like to compete at lightweight, but it's hard to find people who are my size,
Yeah.
So I take the first thing I can get.
Yeah, my wife goes through the same thing. As a matter of fact, she just did a tournament locally. It's an they do an all kids tournament in the morning and then an all women's tournament that afternoon. So we're there till like 9 that night. Yeah. But they've combined the brown and black belt women just so they can get fights, because it's so, like you said, it's so difficult. And that goes back to what I was saying about getting a blue belt is difficult, but seeing women purple belts and brown belts and a woman black belt is like so rare. It's so rare. So it gets even harder as you progress. Yeah, you're making progress in your belt ranking, but now it's kind of like your ability to find a match decreases significantly, right?
Yeah. Well, and then there's so many levels to brown belt. There's so many levels to black belt. I mean, what school are they from? How long have they trained to get there? Yeah. And there's the more knowledge you have, the more knowledge you need. So it's like, I'm scared when I get to brown. I'm gonna be like, oh
god. When I did my first match as a brown belt, I had to talk myself into it. Like that day, I'm like, oh my god,
good idea.
I'm gonna be competing with brown belts, and I'm like, no, I'm one too. Damn it, I can. I was literally trying to psych myself up because I was so freaking nervous. Because you think like blue belt, okay, purple belt, oh okay, it's a little bit tougher, and then brown belt, I'm like, oh my gosh, And I started jiu-jitsu late. I started jiu-jitsu when I was 40. So now, so now I go into a black belt match and I'm shaking hands with guys I used to YouTube, when I first started, and I'm like, do you realize who you are?
They've been a black belt for 30 years.
Yeah, exactly. Like,
oh shit.
Yeah. Actually, when I started, as a white belt, obviously I started, and I was talking to a friend of mine back in Virginia, and I told him I was doing jiu-jitsu. He's like, man, you're too old for that. I was like, no, there's a lot of people my age doing jiu-jitsu. And he goes, yeah, they're called black belts. That's what they're called. But you're right.
And they lived in Brazil for 20 years.
Yes. And my first black belt match was in the Phoenix Open, and the guy I fought had won I think he won Nogi Worlds once. Yeah. And then I beat him. I dominated by DQ. He reaped. Anyway,
yeah, right. Take what you can get.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll take it. The second match, I lost, but his name is Sydney Silva, and Sydney is a black belt in judo and grew up in Brazil, and he's a 3-stripe black belt in jiu-jitsu, and I'm like, I'm gonna get killed. But anyway, I managed not to get killed, which is nice. But he beat me up pretty good.
Yeah, my favorite is one of my friends was a brand new white belt and decided to compete. And I knew the guy he was going against had been a black belt in judo for like 5 years. No. And I was like, pull guard. Trust me, pull guard.
Did he listen?
He pulled guard and he beat him. But
nice.
Yeah. But still, I was like, yeah.
Yeah,
you never know.
You never know, man. Those judo guys. Yeah. So that happens. I'm glad they made the rule. Like, if you had a wrestling background, like a D1 wrestling background, or you're a black belt in judo, like you're going to compete at blue belt or above. Which is, or at least at blue belt, I should say. But I've seen people go in at white belt and just get dumped on their head by a D1 wrestler who's, D1 wrestler, fights in Bellator, and all that other shit. So it's hard to watch, man.
And now he's at New Breed. Just
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
right.
it just sucks, man. But you
Yeah.
know, it's part of the game. I mean, people dedicate their life to grappling. I just didn't.
Yeah. There's just, I mean, jujitsu is so, the spectrum is so broad that there's no level playing field, no matter what belt you're at. I mean,
Right.
I go against this girl who's 20 something years old at my new school, and she kills me every time. She's a blue belt.
Yeah.
And, I'll go to a couple other places and I'm tapping out brown and black belts. And
Mm,
a lot of that has to do with, I think, not knowing the person and not knowing what they know and kind of sneaking things in that they might not think that and
yeah.
so it's impossible to really judge. That's why I always say I don't just want to be a black belt. I want to be a black belt for a really long time, as long as I possibly can, because once you hit that, then that's where it starts, and then all the knowledge is just like, there's just so much, so you never know what somebody else knows.
Yeah.
So I
And
still get my ass kicked by white belts all the time.
well, I've got a couple blue belts in the academy. We my wife and I own an academy here in Arizona, and I've got a couple blue belts and purple belts that just, man, it makes me wish I was at least 3 years younger. I don't know, man.
I know. A year, I hit 40 and it was over.
Oh my
Oh
gosh.
my
Yeah.
God. I hit 40 and like my hair started falling out. This was like a couple months ago.
Yeah. Yeah. Every time I go see my eye doctor, I think I'm dying. He's like, "Oh, you need trifocals." And I was like, "What the hell is that? Is that a thing? Are you lying to me?" He's like,
Yeah.
yeah. But I actually asked him once. I said, "Hey, how do I get the like the implant lenses?" And he goes, "Oh, well, we only do that for people who get cataracts." I'm like, "Well, how do I get cataracts? Because I want those
Yeah.
implant lenses like right now." So yeah, he thought I was kidding, but I wasn't. He didn't answer my question anyway.
Can you do LASIK?
I did LASIK when I was early 40s maybe.
Okay.
And yeah, and then my eyes just got old.
Really? That's
So
great. I did it 2005. I had LASIK and I still get
nice.
20/20. I'm just waiting for the other bulb to drop, other shoe to drop.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I did it, and it was great. It was great for a few years, and then I could feel like I could feel myself getting tired, and I knew I was squinting a little bit, and then it started out with like me trying to hold something that I could read in my hands, and it's just a matter of time.
Yeah.
But
I
yeah.
always thought I always thought it'd be cool to like learn how to grapple, like, not to sound weird, but like in the dark or like blindfolded or something like that, because I've seen so many, you see like street fights, you see all this stuff where people get pepper sprayed and
Hmm.
they still have to kind of like fight for their life, or someone blindsides them, punches them in the face and they can't see now. And
Yeah.
I always like, I would like to try like different challenges like that.
Yeah. Do you ever do that? Do you ever roll with your eyes closed?
Not really. I mean, I've tried once or twice. I think we did it one time in class, like with like it was like really dark in the place. We used to train in a warehouse or whatever,
Yeah.
ghetto style. But
Yeah.
yeah, but no, I guess I don't think about it when I'm in the moment. But I
Okay.
probably could try.
Yeah, I've done it, but I cheat. I open my eyes a little bit and see what's going on.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
but
good. Soon you won't see it all.
right, I know. It's just a matter of time. Yeah, yeah. Come on, cataracts. Um,
Yeah.
but so going into competition, what is that like for you? You said you like to fight at did you say lightweight?
Yeah.
Okay, and you said your weight kind of fluctuates a little bit. Is it something
Mhm.
you dial in like diet wise? You just train harder? Do you cut weight? How do you approach that when you're going to compete?
Oh boy. I have fought at pretty much every weight class up to medium, I think, or medium heavy, maybe. I just my weight's always fluctuated. The last 3 years, I had a thyroid issue that I've been kind of trying to work out. I'm on medication for it, but it makes it really, really difficult because it doesn't just mess with your thyroid, but your hormones plus getting older. Um, so when I want to get down to lightweight, also the last two times I was down at lightweight, some weird things happened. And then like I had a weird stomach issue for four
Mm,
months and I was laid up on the couch. I couldn't do anything. I couldn't
yeah.
work out, so I put on all this weight, lost it again, and then went through like a stressful time, put on all this weight. It's just, I'm also Italian, so I eat a lot. um, but when I want to get to lightweight, I just wake up one day and I say no to the grindstone. And
Mm,
I'm in the gym and I'm running and I'm eating ground beef and salmon and
yeah.
just living.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I love it. I love it.
yeah.
Yeah, I've taken a lot of different approaches, man. And, you know, I didn't have a wrestling background, so I didn't know about cutting weight, you know, until, like I said, I was 40. And then someone says, "Oh, it's just 10 pounds, no big deal." That sucked, man. And I keep doing it. And now I'm working
I
with
try
a diet
not to.
coach. I know it sucks, but now I'm working with a diet coach, and that makes all the difference in the world. I mean, Jenny's been amazing. I started working with one diet coach who trains at our academy, and it was cool to walk into a tournament like fed and hydrated and on weight.
That's how I was the last 2 tournaments. I finally like learned how to like hone it in and do it the right way. So
Yeah, and
it's
how do you?
different.
Yeah, what's the right way for you? Is it through diet? Is it mainly through diet? Do you have to cut it all?
I may cut like 3 pounds the last 2 days or
Okay.
so.
Yeah.
But I try to just stay really, really low that last like week or two.
Okay.
And then maybe I'll cut a little bit of water like the night before or something. I'm really good at cutting weight because when you grow up thick in the 90s, when heroin chic is in, you learn how to cut it really fast, unhealthily. I've always been pretty curvy. I'm half Italian, I'm half Russian, so I
Gotcha.
definitely have hour and a half glass. But you learn to really cut. Like I'll run in a sweatsuit, but I try not to do that anymore. I get to the point where I'm able to have a cup of oatmeal before I go compete and drink some water and be, and the last 2 competitions that I did was way better because I had the energy. Well, I take that back. The last competition that I did was some rinky dink Florida Academy, something like that in Fort Lauderdale. I get down there. The morning of, they changed my weight class to a pound less. And I had 40 minutes to weigh in. I went, thank God it's Fort Lauderdale.
Yeah.
I put a whole sweatsuit on. I went in the car and I sweat out almost a pound, 12 ounces
You just sat in your car?
in 35 minutes. Yeah, I sat in my car with the heat on, in the sun with a sweatsuit on, and I had dog shit bags in my car, and I put plastic bags on myself and sweated out like 12 ounces in like 35 minutes. I went to go shake her hand and I was like this.
Yeah.
And I pulled guard and I got the sweep and I was like, I'm done.
Yeah, that's it. Just hold and do nothing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
I just by a hair. I won that one. So
wow. No, I've
so
seen
no
people,
playing with her.
I've seen people do that. I've never had to do that, like sit in the car, but out here, I mean, when we go to tournaments and, when we're doing tournaments in Arizona or in Vegas, I mean, it's 100 and holy shit outside, so people will just sit in their car and sweat it out. I mean, I
definitely didn't plan on it. I just, they had one thing in the morning. I drove all the way down there. I go to weigh in. The guy's like, oh, okay, well, you can't weigh in. We got there hours early. He's like, you can't weigh in until 30 minutes before your match.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, okay. So I went in like a couple minutes early and I just looked at the screen or something or whatever they had. And they had literally changed it that morning. And I was like, what kind of psychosis is this? And I was like, did they change it? He's like, yeah, they decided to change. I was like,
oh my gosh.
Yeah.
No. And I'm the
type.
type.
I didn't read it wrong. I went back and I was right.
Yeah. No, I'm the type that, I got to weigh in at 181.4. If I weigh in at 181.3 or lower, I am pissed because I'm only going to give them exactly what they want. And there's some people that'd be like, oh yeah, I was 5 under or 6 under. You're in the wrong weight class, dude. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't like to give. I'm pissed. I'm pissed if I have to, do anything like that. But let me ask you, so you have your Jitz Chickz podcast, and you I think you still need to do that somehow. I know you had some other posts on there, but I really enjoyed listening to your show. Where did that start and why? I mean, with everything you have going on, you're like, oh, let's add a podcast to this thing.
So when I get my heart broken, I go completely insane and I have to do something.
Gotcha.
So every time it happens, I buy a motorcycle. I, start a new band. I have to do something. And I had been in such a shit mood for so long. And I had just started becoming friends with this girl that joined this is my old gym. And she was a brand new white belt. And I just said, I got to do something creative just to outlet everything. So we used to walk our dogs together on this big long canal behind my house, and we were just hanging out one day. We both look at each other and we're like, let's do a podcast. Like it came out at the same, like I had thought about it earlier that day, and we just said it at the same time, like, perfect, we'll call it Jitz Chickz. And then she, because of her job, is very, high end. My job's pretty high end too, but nobody pays attention to me there. So they're not going to ever see my stuff. They don't give a shit if I live or die.
Yeah.
So she's like, yeah, they really don't. So she's like, I can't call it Jitz Chickz because my work is going to be like, so you have this new podcast. What's it called? And she's like,
Yeah.
So I said, okay, let's do Jitz Chickz, which I still someday will probably regroup and do Jitz Chickz at some point.
Love it.
So
Oh
we decided to do it, and we got all the equipment. I spent a ton of money, and every weekend it was an excuse. Every weekend it was this or that. And, it's not everybody's fault because some people do get busy and it's understandable. But after 10 months, I was like, look, I really want to do this and we're not going anywhere with it. So I'm going to do it by myself. Right after that, another friend of mine said, oh, well, I'll do it with you. We did one episode and then it just never happened again. Like I was saying earlier before we started filming, these hoes ain't loyal. I just can't get anyone to commit. And and I want to do it myself, but it's hard to invite people and I like to do it kind of in person sometimes, but I have done a few Zoom.
Yeah.
And I would like to start dedicating more of my time to it. I just haven't had a lot of time. So
soon. It can consume you a little bit. So I decided I was going to do this. A friend of mine and I did it. He's been on probably 7 or 8 episodes, maybe 9, but he was on episode 1 because I wanted to get I hope he doesn't hear this. I wanted to get a real guest for episode 1, but I thought, well, I don't know how to work the microphones. I don't know how to work the camera. What if it all sucks, right? So I'm just going to do it with my friend, and then if it sucks, what the hell do I care, right? But it was fun. It was awesome, and I noticed I sleep like a baby after these episodes because I have a good conversation with somebody. And I just get all my words out. I don't know. But yeah, you know what I mean? It's I love it. I love doing it.
That's kind of why I started it too, because I have an outlet. I love music and everything, but everyone always thinks that I'm funny and that I have a good sense of humor. I was like, no, it's like a disease. I can't, if I don't let it out, I'm going to jail.
Yeah.
So I have to have an outlet for it. And every time you say you sleep like a baby, after every podcast that I do, whether I'm a guest on someone else's or I do my own, I'm like, oh shit. What did I say this time? Or is everyone going to think that I'm crazy? No. Oh, here he comes. Everyone thinks that I'm crazy. I just say the most outlandish things, especially if I'm drinking 5 cups of coffee or something like that.
Nice.
So
nice.
So yeah, but I have to let it out. I have to, get the funny stuff out. And I never think I'm funny. I just observe crazy things in life and people are like, that's hilarious. I'm like, I guess. So I do that and talk about jujitsu because I don't, I have jujitsu friends, but they're all married or busy all the time. Here he comes. Or busy all the time. And so they don't want to sit and talk about jujitsu after training all day. So I have a way to talk about jujitsu.
Yeah. One complaint that I get from people that listen to the show, the 12 people that listen to the show. Oh, yeah, buddy. Is we'll have we could have had a conversation about motorcycles for an hour and I would have been happy. Yeah. And then people were like, you didn't talk about jiu-jitsu at all. I'm like, yeah, I guess I didn't, so that's so I try to work it in as much as possible.
But it's funny because you can only talk about jiu-jitsu so much. And that's what happened with mine is that we would start talking about jiu-jitsu and be like, okay, not everyone's going to know what an armbar is. And then we would just start talking about other things. And now it's just about life.
Yeah, that's cool. That's cool. Yeah. And I think those make the best conversations because you and I have a bond, whether we whether people know it or not, we have a bond because we know how hard this martial art is to do. So automatically, there's a mutual respect. And then we just kind of build off of that and talk about other shit. I mean, I think it's awesome. Yeah. But there are times when I'm so obsessed with getting people on the show that I'll be like, oh shit, I've done 5 this week. And how am I going to release them? I'm gonna have to release 2 a week or something. And that's happened,
Well, it's the same with jujitsu. You become kind of obsessed and, you kind of fixate on what you're doing, and that's kind of how I am with the band sometimes, and they get annoyed with me because I'm like, we have to do this song, we have to do this song, and
Yeah.
but but it is good. It's a good outlet to talk about it, and it's just good to get it out, and even if people who are listening don't know what jujitsu is,
Right. Yeah. But
know.
somebody, people can get something out of this, right? I'll give you an example. I'm not into NASCAR at all. Okay. I've watched it. I used to watch it because being in Virginia, you're exposed to that a lot. But I start listening to podcasts that I have no interest in just so I can hear different interview styles. Right. And I picked up, and some of them are interesting. I listened to this NASCAR one, and it's these two guys talking about like how to cheat, how they used to cheat back in the day. And one guy's like, "Oh yeah, everybody ran nitrous," and I'm like, "Oh, I'm listening,"
Yeah.
so I was just like, how do you pull that out? Because the cars get inspected and you can't have nitrous. It's in NASCAR. And the guy was saying that they used to hide cylinders in their suit.
Yeah.
The car was like open to the engine back in the day, I guess. And he goes, they call it fogging. They would fog it in. I'm like, that's got to be the most dangerous shit I've ever heard in my life. So now
is that your cylinder in your suit, or you just have to see me?
Yeah, this guy had a giant cylinder.
I mean, those NOS cans are pretty big.
Yeah, and they had them like hidden in their suit, or they used to like weld it into like a roll bar section.
Yeah.
So it looked like it part of the roll. I'm like, oh my gosh, like I was hooked. I listen to that fucking show every day now. Like I'm just waiting for the next thing.
Yeah, and I'm into like I said, motorcycles and cars and all that stuff. And recently I bought a Prius because I have a van for the dog because he's so big, he has to have a big van. And I also I refinish furniture and do all that stuff, so I'm always picking shit up off the side of the road.
Gotcha.
So most of my no, I'm just kidding. So I have a Prius because it was so cheap. It's $2,500. It runs whatever.
Perfect.
It's in really good condition, and I get like 70 miles to the gallon because I was tired of spending so much. Gas went up, and I just can't afford it.
Yeah.
So the only issue is my gas tank has an evap issue where you can only get like 4 gallons of gas into it because it has do not knock this over. It has a bladder, and the bladder over time twists.
Yeah.
And it closes up as time goes on, and you only can get like a couple of gallons into it. So I'm like researching how to fix it because a whole new fuel system is like $3,000. I was like, I don't have the money. I'm not putting that into a piece of shit old 2007 Prius.
Right.
And I found out that you can put, and now I don't remember what it's called. There's like a portable gas tank that you can put like in your trunk. And I was like, how do people not die? Like, that is the most dangerous thing that I've ever heard of. And that's when I started listening to like NASCAR stuff, like you said, and it really is interesting.
Yeah.
To learn a whole new, but I'm like, why do you have a gas tank in your trunk? Like you're gonna die. Someone hits you, you're dead.
Oh my gosh. So I'm really big on like subculture. Okay. Really big. Like anything mafia related, I'm down.
Yeah.
I want to hear all about it. And I started listening to these podcasts about like guys that, gang members, like Mexican gang members that were, getting out of prison. Dude, I can't get enough of it. Like, that little subculture, that little world that they live in, it's like, it's right under our nose. It's happening all around us, but I don't know the signs. Like, I don't know what I'm looking for. I can't get enough of that stuff. Like all of that stuff is so intriguing to me.
Well, and what's good, like you were saying, how people who train jujitsu, they have a lot in common because it does take a certain type of brain, a certain type of personality. And I think a lot of that is when you train jujitsu, reality is brought to the forefront every day for an hour and a half. You are faced with mortality, you're faced with your own life. So what is really interesting is to learn about the person behind that. And you'll notice that a lot of people who train jiu-jitsu will race NASCAR, will, be a Mexican cartel.
Yeah.
You get a little shady characters, but it is interesting to learn different things about different people, especially when they're involved in jiu-jitsu, because you wonder how that connects.
Yeah.
That's part of the reason why I started this too, is because, different personalities.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, when you're looking for people to interview, like I'm always looking for like a cool story. Like I saw your Instagram, like there's got to be a cool story. And there are times when I get caught up in, I don't know, like stuff that I want to get into. And then I'll go back and I'm like, oh my gosh, like one interview that I did with a gentleman, it was so much fun. We had a lot of fun talking about jujitsu. We started talking about, things in life. Well, he'd been sober 365 days and I didn't bring it up once. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I have to stop, like I have to stop thinking about what I want to listen to and just like talk about what you want to talk about. You know what I mean? I'm sure he wanted to tell that story. He had a whole other story that was awesome too, but God, we could go back and talk. We could have talked for another hour.
Yeah. See, I don't think of stories until like something hits me out of the blue. Like I forget half my life, and then like I literally have a list of like stories that I've been wanting to tell on my podcast, and then I get talking and then I forget. And one of them I actually remembered was it's on one of my episodes where I lived in Jacksonville and my cousin lived in Gainesville at the time. I'll make it really short. And I was seeing a guy who lived close by to my cousin, so I visit her on weekends. And like the third or fourth time I think that I was there, he decided to pick me up from her house instead of me driving to his house. And he picked me up and there's a guy in the passenger seat and the guy like doesn't get out of the passenger seat. And I sit in the back. I'm like, well, that's weird. But I was like 20 something. So I was like, men are weird at this age.
Yeah.
And we like go through like a drive through to get food. And he enters in the exit and we almost get hit by a car. And I was like, what are you, fucking blind? And the guy was blind.
Oh no. Oh,
his friend in the front seat. That's why he didn't get out for me. So like crazy ass stories that I forget to tell.
Oh my God.
And there is one, completely out of the blue. Not that this has anything to do with anything we're talking about, but one of the stories I keep forgetting how to tell on the podcast whenever I'm talking to people is I had a friend who was from Australia, and he was just this crazy party animal. And when he was in Australia, he met a girl at a bar, and she brought him home to her parents' house, and he didn't know she was in high school. Oh. And he was like 25 at the time. He had no idea. He thought she's at a bar. She's got to be 20 something years old. It's Australia. I think the alcohol ages are different. She handcuffed him in her closet and kept him there for 3 days. Oh. And he would hear her parents like wake up and like be in the house, and she'd be like going off to school and shit. And she would like come back and like sleep with him and then like, like keep him handcuffed the whole time and like feed him and like bring him food. And then she would leave. And I don't remember what happened, but one day he like finally got out of it and like ran from her house, whatever. And like her dad was like chasing him and all this stuff. It's kind of similar to like, there's a scene in Trainspotting that's kind of similar to that, but he was there for like 3 days. And then I think like 5 years later, he went back to Australia, and I was still friends with one of his friends, and he was at another, a girl's house or whatever. And some guy broke in and he snapped his neck and broke it and went to prison for 10 years.
Oh my gosh.
That's a story. And why do I forget to tell it? It's not my life. I'm not the one in prison, but I always forget to tell that story. Like, why?
Well, I guarantee that girl, wherever she is, she's done some time too. Like she kidnapped a guy. I guarantee that wasn't the last time she kidnapped somebody. Yeah. Oh, guaranteed.
He was like 17 at the time, but
yeah. Oh my
not God. Condoning.
That is a wild freaking story, man.
Yeah.
Holy shit.
I have wild stories about my life too, but I forget half the shit when I go to tell the story.
Yeah. Yeah. There's some things that I guess I've shared pretty much everything. My life is pretty, I don't want to say it's vanilla. I've done a lot of cool shit, but yeah, if I could share one story where I really made a big mistake, it would be when I was in the Navy. We went to Ireland, and we were in Ireland for way too long because it was really bad, but people were awesome. The place was awesome. But I remember I was walking down the pier going back to my ship, and I see this boat sitting there on the pier, and it's tied up. There was a mooring line, going across. And I thought, oh, I want to see what's on this boat. So I get on this. I had this idea that I was going to work my way on the mooring line to that boat, like hand over hand, foot over foot. Well, the mooring line looked dead straight until I put my weight on it, and then it made this giant U. So I'm trying to climb up, and I couldn't do it. My hands were giving out, and it's fucking freezing. The water's fucking cold.
Oh yeah. No.
And there's no way to hide that I fell into the water, right? I mean, I'm gonna go back to my boat. So my buddy was walking by, and he's like, "Hey, that's my feet are hanging. I'm hanging by my hands." And he's like, that's the last thing that happens before you fall in. And I'm like, oh shit. And somehow I managed to get myself close enough back to the pier where my buddies pulled me up. But that's about the stupidest thing I've ever done when I've been drinking. I mean, I can't imagine had I fallen into that water. I don't even know how I would have gotten out. But those are the types of things that go through my mind. I'm like, oh, this seems like a good idea. Bad idea. Bad
Well, you
idea.
think about all the other ways that it could have gone and you
Oh,
kind of like lived through it. I have a few of those near-death experiences.
yeah.
A couple of years ago, my dad and I and my brother, we all ride motorcycles. We went to Yellowstone, and through Montana and like all of Wyoming and Idaho and everything, and Jackson Hole. We did the whole tour, and I had to be back at work like 3 days before they did. So we did like 700 miles in like 3.5 days or whatever, through the mountains, everything. And I left from Cody to go to Jackson Hole to fly out, and I had to leave by myself because my dad and my brother were going the other way. So I had to get up at like 4:35 in the morning and ride on the motorcycle in 10-degree weather for 4 hours. No GPS, there's no cell phone signal. All I had was a map, and I'll never forget it because I was so nervous that I'll never forget the fishing bridge in Yellowstone. I could probably find it today because if I didn't make a left there, I'd be 300 miles out of the way. There's no gas stations. And I had, because I'm short, they give me the shittiest motorcycles when I rent motorcycles. So I was on like a 1980 Harley Sportster. This thing was
Oh my God.
topped out at 80 miles an hour. And I thought it was going to blow up on me.
It's that old 883 or whatever they had back then. It's like,
I think it was 883. Yeah. And so it was like, it's like, it's like a scooter. I felt like Dumb and Dumber, when he's on the scooter, like I can't 80 miles an hour on this one. So, I'm by myself. It's freezing. I lost my right glove. So I'm like throttling and then like putting my hand between my legs, throttling, putting my hand between my legs. I'm freezing. I just made it to the one gas station to fill up because there's only one. And if you miss it, you're dead. I mean, you're out there in the middle, no cars, no tourists. It's off season, and bears everywhere.
Oh, shit. Yeah.
Bears and elk running out in front of you. And I developed this extreme phobia of bears and bear-shaped rocks. But I made it. And, I lived to tell a tale. And that's like, and when you tell the story, it's like, oh, it's not that big of a deal. But there's like 900 ways I could have died. Oh, yeah. I could have wrecked the bike. I could have, anything could have happened.
Ran out of gas in the freezing cold. That's pretty much you're dead. I mean, what are you going to do? Yeah. Right.
So when you think back about it, you're like, okay, I lived through that. And never again.
Yeah. So what, I know this is turning into this is your life kind of thing, but is there like a thing that you've done with a friend that's like so outrageous that like looking back, it was like one of the best times of your life, but going through it, you're like, oh my gosh, this is never going to end. Have you ever done anything like that?
I got put in handcuffs in France.
Oh shit.
Okay. When I think I had just turned 18 and my friend was 17. She is from Rocca al Mare in Sicily, and she has an uncle in Rome. She has an aunt in Milan. She has family in Nice, not in Nice, Florence. Okay. And then our other friend has a couple friends in Paris and Aix-en-Provence in France. So we decided to skip out on her high school graduation completely. We decided to backpack through Europe. So we're on the Louvre in France.
Nice.
And we're looking around and we're like, oh, today's our graduation day. We're supposed to be graduating and getting our diplomas today. We're like, fuck that. So we're backpacking through. My friend, I'm still angry to this day. I'm still angry. She's obviously from Italy, so she speaks Italian, fluent French, fluent. We ended up in a youth hostel, put our bags there, and we met these guys on a train. And they said, come hang out with us tonight, blah, 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 in broken French, whatever she speaks to them. We get on another train. We go to a couple of the casinos in Monaco. And I'm taking pictures inside of the casino. This was 2001. I didn't know that you couldn't do that. I took a picture of apparently one of the biggest high rollers in Monaco, like multi-billionaire guy. Yeah. And all of this, I go click and I hear click, click, and I'm in handcuffs. And I was like, Anna, tell me what's going on. And she is just white-faced and silent and does not communicate And I was like, Anna, explain to them that we're tourists and I didn't know that it was illegal and I can't read the sign. I don't speak French. And she just didn't say anything.
Oh shit.
They had to bring someone in who speaks English for me to explain to them that I didn't mean to do anything. They took my film, let us go. Yeah. They gave us a bottle of water, which was great because back then they were like $8 in Monaco. So in fact, the week before that, we were in Aix-en-Provence in France, and they had a festival, and I'm standing in the middle of the road, and everyone's on the side of the road. And I'm like, why is everyone on the side of the road? And all of a sudden, 9 2,500-pound bulls with the big oxes with the horns come running full fucking speed at me around the corner. And my friend pulls me out and she's like, yeah, it's the running of the bulls. I was like, you could have told me. You could have told me. Well, they told me in French. I'm like, I don't speak French. So we meet these guys. They take us to the beach. I'm trying to tell them our youth hostel closes at 11. We need to be back at the youth hostel.
Yeah. She
will not communicate to them that we need to leave. She's like, well, maybe I should wait to tell them. I was like, we're going to be sleeping in the street. She doesn't tell them. It's 3 a.m. They said, we'll come back to our house. They drive us all through the mountains. I don't speak any French. She's not communicating with them, even though she speaks fluent French. They pull off on the side of the road up the side of this mountain, and we have to walk in the dark at least 1.25 miles through this little path in the bushes. I'm like, we're getting raped and we're dying. That's the end. We're getting raped and we're dying. 3 guys, 3 girls. We're dead.
Yeah.
And we have to go all the way up in the dark, pitch black, no lights in the city, no lights in the woods, trees 40 feet tall. We get to this guy's house. They put us in a room and we go, somehow by a miracle, we go to sleep. We wake up and we somehow find these guys' room and they bring us back to the youth hostel. End of story.
Whoa.
I was like, we could have died because you refused to speak French that you know fluently. So yeah, adventurers.
Yeah, no kidding. I did when I was in the Navy, I was transferring, a buddy of mine were transferring from Virginia to California. And we left our ship in Portsmouth, England, flew to Atlanta, and we flew to Atlanta. Oh, yeah, Atlanta, then Virginia. Picked up his Miata, and he and I drove across the country in a Miata.
In a Miata.
With all of our shit. With all of our shit. We had, the trunk was loaded down. We had bags on top of the trunk, like, you know, just tied down. And we had, like, the passenger was just surrounded by shit, by shoes and clothes. And we had all of our stuff in there.
Bachelor.
Yeah, we drove, it was 3 days. We drove 3 days across the country.
Awesome.
I'll never do that again. I mean, I love him, but
it's a good experience.
Oh yeah, it was a great experience. Yeah. Well, I mean, one of the days is like, you know, the movie Tombstone was really popular, and we're driving through Arizona. I'm like, and it saw an exit, Tombstone that way. I was like, hey, let's go. It was like another 100 fucking miles to Tombstone. Oh yeah. But we did it anyway. That was fun. I mean, it was cool, but gosh, I don't know that I'd ever do that again.
I feel bad that I think I started watching your podcast and talked to you 2 weeks or 3 weeks after I was in Phoenix. My sister just got married in Phoenix. And I was like, I wish I would have known. I would have come to train with you. And
100%. Yeah.
I did Tom's Thumb, which is not in Phoenix. It's Flagstaff, Arizona. Okay.
Yeah.
It's a pretty good hike. I almost died. I'm not used to elevation.
You forget you're at what, 7,000 feet or something ridiculous. And then you're hiking hill all the time. Yeah. Flagstaff is beautiful, but it's some tough hiking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was a good time. I just wish I would have known you were there, because I had a rental car. I could have drove to Phoenix and come train. And
yeah. I mean, come to the studio. We could have done this in the studio. That would have been awesome. But maybe some other time. But
his parents live there. Her husband's parents live there. So if I ever visit.
Yeah, please come out. Yeah, I'll have you over at the academy, and yeah, we'll definitely do part 2 of the podcast. But hey,
I'll wear a white belt.
I won't let you. I'll call you out. Actually, if you forget your belt, you can wear the pink belt to shame. So that's
I've never worn a pink belt.
Never. Yeah, we have one, and it's like an A5, so it hangs down to people's knees.
Perfect.
It's fantastic. Yeah. But hey, listen, before we go, let everybody know how they can find you. You know, social media wise, talk about your podcast a little bit. Anything you want to talk about, shoot.
Yeah. So I started the podcast about a year ago called Jitz Chickz. It was supposed to be Jitz Tits, which we were talking about before, but it's called Jitz Chickz. I don't have a podcast partner at the moment, but I'm going to start doing more things like this with the Zoom and interviewing whoever wants to talk. So send me a message and we'll chat about whatever. I like learning about people's lives, and that's about it. Yeah.
I love it. I love it. So, a couple of things. I'm going to do a lightning round of questions here shortly, if you don't mind. But just some questions. I mean, you know, at my academy, or my wife and I's academy, we like to empower kids, empower women, empower, just adults with, all the baggage that we have with us. And you started jiu-jitsu, you say in your early 30s, right? 30, 31. So what would you say to, women who are looking to get into this martial art? Like, where would they start? What recommendations would you make? How do you stay healthy? All of that stuff.
Well, to start, my dad's been in construction for 41 years before he retired. And I kind of grew up under his wing. And I don't think that jiu-jitsu at all is a male dominated sport. Yes, there's more men than there are women, but forget jiu-jitsu. Women can do anything that they want. Look, we're not going to be able to do all the heavy lifting, but if you want to get into rugby, get into rugby. You want to get into football, get into football. If you want to get into jiu-jitsu, it's no different. You're only going to train as hard as you can train. You're only going to get hurt as much as you get hurt. But anyone getting into jiu-jitsu, just go for it. It's a good release. It's great for your brain. It's,
awesome.
Easy for some people, not easy for others, but not easy for me.
That is a great answer.
Women or man, it doesn't matter if you're a woman or a man. It's not. And don't think that I am most respected in jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
I am less respected in all other walks of life. When I walk onto the mats, every man always has respect for me, never treats me any differently than anybody else. That's where I feel the most comfortable. So don't be pushed away by women who say, oh, men are weird and creepy in jiu-jitsu. It's complete bullshit. I've been in this 10 years. I've been to every gym under the sun. It's never happened. Maybe because I'm obnoxious. Probably because I have bigger balls than some people.
Yeah, that's probably true. But no, I love the answer. That's a great answer. All right. So I do a lightning round of questions, and answer as quickly as you can. If you want to pass, just pass. All right.
You're going to have to clip this because I'm going to say some inappropriate shit.
Please do. Please do. This has been fantastic.
Okay.
All right. So name a game show you think you could actually win.
The Price is Right, because all you have to do is turn the knob.
I love it. What's your favorite cheat meal?
Anything with cheese. Anything with cheese.
I love it. What's the longest you've gone without brushing your teeth?
12 hours.
Okay. What's your go-to karaoke song?
Lately, it's been Stone Cold by Demi Lovato, but most of it's I Will Always Love You by Whitney Houston.
Okay, I love it.
Or Cry Baby, Janis Joplin.
Ooh, nice. That's got to be a tough one to sing.
That's the last song, I think.
What's a dumb song you secretly like? Like for me, it's
a dumb song that I secretly like.
Yeah.
All of them. Really any new rap songs that are the stupidest lyrics ever, but like Cardi B. Anything Cardi B. I love Cardi B's music. It is the trashiest, most disgusting, vile shit ever, and I will listen to it every time I'm working out.
Awesome. Do you like to sleep in or take a nap?
I don't have time to do either. Or I don't have time to sleep at all, ever.
Okay. DC or Marvel?
DC or Marvel? I'm gonna, just for the sake of my friends from the Sofa Kingdom podcast, say Marvel.
Marvel, I love it. Do you kill bugs or yell for help?
Kill bugs.
Would you rather travel into the future or back in time?
Neither. I like where I'm at.
I love it. Use a public,
but back in time to see my dog.
Use a public restroom or hold it.
Squat over the public restroom.
I love it.
In the bushes.
Rolling Stones or Elvis?
Rolling Stones.
What's your favorite childhood TV show?
Childhood TV show. I used to watch Doug, the cartoon.
Oh, yeah. Okay. That's a new one. That's a new one.
Rocko's Modern Life, that kind of stuff. That's how.
Yeah. That's awesome. Well, Margo, thank you for being on. I really appreciate it. I'm a fan of you. I'm a fan of your show, and I'll keep listening. I hope you'll come back on. If you're ever in Phoenix, we'll have you in the studio. But thank you again. I appreciate your time.
Thank you so much.
You got it.